This is the DRF Players Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Tuesday, October 18th edition of the DRF Players Podcast. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatale, back with you alongside the usual crew. On my right, from the DRF offices in New York, it's Mike Hogan. Mike, what's up?
Not much. It's summer again, Pete.
Summer again, yeah. I got a little bit of that whiff in the air yesterday. It's apparently going to be even worse today. Time to turn the air conditioner back on here in New York?
I think it's going to be in the 80s.
Oh, that's just gross. What have we done to the planet? And on my left, coming to us from his office today, you in your office in Texas? Is that where you are, JK?
I am in the office, yes. Getting after it, getting a lot of work done because the word on the streets is there will be another invasion of beautiful Lexington, Kentucky this weekend.
Yes, JK and I both going down to Lexington. Busman's holiday for me, just going to the Breeders' Cup last year. I had so much fun and vowed to myself whenever possible that I was going to make at least one trip to Lexington for the spring and fall meets. Was able to make it there for the spring for quasi-business to cover the contest. This time it's just a chance to go and hang out with some Kentucky-based friends of whom there are so many, some of them even listening to this podcast right now. So it's going to be a good opportunity. My wife decided, her birthday coming up, she decided she wanted to go to a rock festival in LA with her friends rather than hang out with me on her birthday. So, kind of a bummer, but, life gives you lemons, make lemonade. I'll be in Lexington, so that'll be fun. What are you most looking forward to about the trip, JK?
I'm looking forward to a few things. I'm looking forward to our friend Pipes and guest last week attacking you probably every 15 to 20 minutes about your pronunciation of the Alcibiades. I'm excited about that.
That was unbelievable, by the way. And I think you two basically let me get away with it on the show, but believe me, our listeners have not. I'd put the over-under on about 15 comments on Twitter, private email, text, saying Alcibiades. But Pipes had an interesting theory as to where my crazy pronunciation of Alcibiades came from. Why don't you share that?
Yeah, so everyone, if you don't know, Pete's a wrestling fan. He's been involved with helping Chris Jericho with some books, and I think it sounds a little bit like Ted DiBiase to me. So maybe that's what influenced it.
It's entirely possible. Being a wrestling fan often comes in handy. Every once in a while, it holds you back. But Lexington going to be great this weekend. Always looking forward to the opportunity to get out there. Unfortunately, we missed the contest this past weekend. That was some of the big stories to come out of Keeneland. Won by, now have you met Ryan? I've not met the man, but I guess he plays partners on occasion with our friend and friend of the podcast, Jack Jenkins. Have you met him?
I've never met Ryan. I don't think if I did, it was probably an adult beverage induced mistake that I don't remember it. But I don't think I've met Ryan before. But yeah, they did really well. It was impressive the way they did that tournament, and Jack's been deserving to be involved in a win at that tournament. You wrote about it last year.
Yeah, remind people of that story if they don't know.
If you're not familiar with the rules at Keeneland, Jim Goodman does an awesome job with that tournament. And what he does, one of the rules he has in there, it's just interesting rules. In one of the last two races, you have to go all in. You have to bet half of your bankroll. Excuse me. Jack did that when he was leading by like $10,000, $15,000. I don't remember the exact number. He did that. There was a gate scratch that then knocked him below betting half of his money, and he got disqualified. So there's a Jack Jenkins rule in there where Jim's he's changed it where if a gate scratch knocks you under that threshold, then there's a way to not be disqualified.
Ryan Steigmeyer is the partner's name. I wanted to make sure to get his last name in there. Isn't he the guy you cut in line in front of at the Horseplayer World Series a couple of years ago?
No, that's allegedly that's Ryan Flanders.
Oh, okay. I'm getting my handicapping contest Ryans confused. Also, some success in the contest world for another friend of the podcast over the weekend, our buddy Brent Sumja, who Jonathon so graciously bought dinner for in Saratoga. I was in charge of ordering the wine. And Brent did well at the Orleans. I think he won the Fall Classic. Did you see anything about that?
I didn't. I knew he was in third at one point, and I didn't follow it through the end. So that's awesome news. Sumj is a ton of fun. He was my first year on the tour. He pulled me aside one time at this dinner, and he was super nice to me and congratulatory and gave me some pretty good advice. And so we've been friends ever since then. He's a really nice guy.
Good player, good cash player as well. Also, don't want to let the weekend's contest activity go by without giving another well-deserved shout-out to Cheryl McIntyre, who incredibly won her 5th Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat of the year in the Keeneland tournament. So obviously she'll transfer 3 of those. But, I mean, just an incredible year for her. And that, I think she ended up 3rd in a big on-site. She was already in the top 5 on the NHC Tour. I haven't seen the new leaderboard, but JK, I suppose there's some chance that's going to vault her right up to the top. Pretty amazing for somebody whose focus seems to be more on the BCBC even than the NHC, is going to end up in a very good position on the NHC Tour. Have you looked at it lately? Who do you think the player to beat on there is?
To be honest with you, I looked at it probably 4 times a week last year. So I've been
4?
taking a break.
I'm taking the over on that one.
I had the NTRA NHC Tour calculator on my desktop, for crying out loud. I was pulling it up every day trying to figure out if so-and-so gets this in this tournament, if I do this. I had a spreadsheet with everyone's top 5 scores, and I would update it. And so I took a break. I took a break from looking at the standings. I'm rooting for and I'm going blank on the name. I think his last name is Johnson. Our guy that's from San Antonio, Texas, Joe Johnson. I'm rooting for him, and I'm rooting for Ken McMahon. So if one of those 2 guys can pull it off, I'll be happy.
Well, you saw that Kenny had a huge weekend too, or did you not notice that?
Kenny always has a huge weekend, so I'm starting to not really care. He got 3rd at Santa Anita. He got 3rd at Keeneland, and he's magnificent. And he's even a better guy.
He's one of our friends who hopefully will be around this weekend. Does he have plans to be in Lexington? Have you seen?
Yeah, he lives there now. They moved, so him and his wife Jeannie, I'm sure, will be around at some point, and we'll definitely run into him. 2
of the funnest people on the handicapping contest scene. If folks want to see more about the Keeneland contest and all the action on DRF tournaments this weekend, you can go to drf.com right now, find the tournament news section, and you can read all my stuff there. Keeneland's website has a slightly more detailed recap, too, of everybody who won BCBC seats and NHC seats, and for the top ones anyway, how they got there. Mike Hogan was not focused in the handicapping contest world on Saturday. He was out with me at beautiful Belmont Park. You missed a good day out there, JK. This was my friend Dale DeGroff, the legendary bartender. He and his wife Jill, twice a year, do these amazing sort of potlucks out in the Belmont backyard where they invite a lot. It typically ends up being a lot of restaurant and liquor industry people, and then also some random straggler degenerates such as Mike and myself. And it was a pretty good day. What was your impression of the DeGroff picnic?
It was amazing. I had no idea what I was walking into. I was there with my 3-year-old son, who was, of course, running around like a little crazy little man in the Belmont back, the picnic area, going over and feeding the ducks in the duck pond, running to the playground, just running all around. And so I said, well, Pete, I'll use that kind of as a home base, but we'll see how much I'm there. Oh my God, the food was amazing. And it was incredible. And not just the food, the people were amazing. I mean, the friendliest, most welcoming, not any of this, who are you and why are you crashing our party, but welcome here, have this, anything you need, let me know. It was fantastic.
Particularly enjoyed that apple cider whiskey punch that Dale made with his own bespoke bitters. It's amazing. He brings in one of those Gatorade coolers that you're used to seeing dumped over the heads of victorious head coaches, fills it with whiskey punch, makes for a very entertaining afternoon. If only I'd done better at the windows. Did you end up winning on the day?
I don't really think I bet much. I think I watched one race in person. It was the first race right when we got there. I was pretty much the only race I had was racing with a 3-year-old. So I had fun, and I barely even put in a few bets. I put in a few bets around the Keeneland races, had a bunch of pick 3s alive to on leave. We'll talk about that. That didn't go so well. But Didn't really invest much at all.
Let's yap about Theory, who we got to see on the day. Mike, what were your impressions of this unusual return to the races for a horse who we thought the year was done, and all of a sudden not so much?
Yeah, I mean, it's rare to hear a horse is done for the year, and then not only not done for the year, come back and win a graded stakes race with a couple months left, and they're talking potentially. I mean, they're not ruling out the Breeders' Cup Juvenile for him. It was a 5-horse field. He was 1-5, 2-5 in there.
I think he ended at 1-5.
He won like you'd expect a 1-5 horse would. I mean, he was by far the best. Kind of stalked the pace and then just took over. Javier, I think, kind of made this move and intimidated that pace rival. Even after he was past him, just kind of crossed over on him and then kicked away. But what was most interesting to me was, I'm not. I'll preface this by saying I'm not a gallop out guy. I don't watch gallop outs as much as some. I think that there's some validity to them, but it's not a major factor in my handicapping by any stretch of the imagination. However, the gallop out on Theory, it was clear. It was a 6 furlong race. He was riding him, 7 furlongs, even a mile in that race. He galloped out like a monster. Javier didn't stop as soon as he passed the wire. They clearly wanted more than the 6 out of him.
I was impressed. I mean, straight as a string, just very... the visual impression of the race itself. Let me go back to the paddock. Very impressed in the paddock. Looked like a 3-year-old or older running against 2-year-olds more or less. The horse that ran second actually also was a very impressive physical specimen, but really impressive on the eyes. During the running of the race, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but it seemed a little more workmanlike. But then the gallop out, I agree with you, Mike, caught my eye and did make me think about, I wonder if there is another race on the dance card, to mix a metaphor, for Theory later in the year. JK, did you get a chance to watch that race?
I did. A couple of things that I got from it. First, that the way that race was ridden, it feels like a horse that needs longer. When you see a horse that's a strong favorite like that, and if you have something riding on the horse, you panic when they're being rubbed on and asked on the turn because you're expecting this 1-5 shot to win easily. And then eventually he just took over and drew off and, like you said, galloped out, really well. So to me, that's the kind of horse that just needs more ground, and this just happened to be the spot where he found himself. Just a handicapping thing that I noticed when I was trying to decide if I wanted to try to play around that horse and some other things was that two works back, Todd worked him a slow three furlongs, and that's not a normal Todd move, and it doesn't tell me that the horse isn't fit enough to win a race like that if he's only going to work him 3, right? If the horse wasn't fit, then why wouldn't he work him a half or 5 like Todd usually does to try to keep that fitness into him? And so that was the point that I realized that the horse was ready to run, and that although there's been some confusion about his health and what was going on with him, that was a good indicator that he was ready to rock and roll.
Well, we've talked a little bit about Syndergaard on this show as well. We talked a lot about Syndergaard this week on Twitter, not quite so much as Ecto, but we were getting there. Curious to just pop the question to you, Mike Hogan. Going forward, which is the Todd Pletcher horse you think would have the best shot of winning come the Breeders' Cup Juvenile?
Oof, it's a little early. I
only asked the question because you told me to ask the question, and now you don't have an answer to the question. Well,
I don't, because I wanted to know your answer.
You shouldn't have told me then. You should have just sprung it back at me. So you're going to punt? Should we just give it to Jonathon?
Well, no. I'll talk a little bit about Theory. I mean, from a pedigree standpoint, this horse doesn't really. I mean, maybe he gets a little bit from Gemologist, but on the dam side, there's not much that shows me he wants to go further than 6 furlongs. The dam was just a sprinter. The best sibling is actually a pretty good sprinter at Mountaineer, Charlestown, 4.5 furlong races. So yeah, visually it looked like he maybe wanted longer. Maybe some of that comes from Gemologist. But I wonder if his future might be as a really top-notch kind of the second coming of competitive edge, and hopefully he stays healthy a little longer. So it's hard. The jury's a little still out. I probably need to watch the races a few times, but those two, I think, certainly are the most impressive East Coast 2-year-olds I've seen this year, and the most impressive Todd 2-year-olds I've seen in a few years. So I'm curious what you guys think. It's part of the reason why I wanted to talk about it.
All right. Well, JK, first I'll ask you to pick between the Todds, and then then I'll hit you with the obvious follow-up question.
I would probably bet Theory coming out of these two races. Syndergaard's going to be overbet just because everyone saw the pace was fast and how game the horse was. I'm actually working on a theory that the inside was pretty good that day, and Practical Joke was on the inside as well a majority of the race until the lane where he tipped out to the 2-path. Yeah, he broke slow, but he got to the rail. He was on the rail the entire backside. He was on the rail the entire turn. And so, that race to me there's potential that race was a little bit dressed up, especially when you see a horse run fractions like that and not stop. It's either the horse is really, really good or he was track aided. And I think I'm leaning track aided. In that situation, I want Theory. He'll be a bigger price. You probably get, 8-9 to 1 on a horse like Theory that if it wasn't for the injury could have potentially been the favorite for this race. So I think I would want Theory moving forward.
It's interesting, and that's an issue that I'm going to go back and look at because we were having that conversation with Chris Larmy and Scott Carson, both of whom were team Practical Joke versus Syndergaard. I took the other view, but certainly, and I didn't. I mean, I haven't done nearly the level of work that you've done on that race, JK. I didn't see that bias in real time, but I'd run a half marathon that day and was doing 5 other things, so maybe I swung and missed. I'm going to go back and look at those charts and watch that tape again too, and I'll weigh in with my thoughts on that as we get closer. Obviously, a lot of time to talk about the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but the biggest question I have, and the one that we really need to know, regardless of where you rank those 3 East Coast horses, where do they fit in the bigger picture compared to the likes of Not This Time and the West Coast 2-year-olds as well?
Well, obviously, I think everyone knows where I'm going to go with that discussion. But just one quick point. I think it's important just to take a mental note. Let's see where Johnny ends up. I know Javier rode Theory, didn't he, this weekend?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe the decision will be made because of that. Johnny was riding Theory initially, so we'll see. That'll be interesting what happens there. I mean, I'm a Not This Time guy, obviously for obvious reasons. And like I said, based on what I've found so far, the Champagne to me is a bet against. The 2 horses out of the Champagne would be a bet against if I'm buying the idea that the inside was good.
And then there's also, of course, who I didn't specifically name check there, but Classic Empire are going to take a lot of long looks for that race as well. So we'll be talking about every Breeders' Cup race in some degree of detail. We've got a very exciting program of Breeders' Cup shows lined up. Looks like we're going to do 3 shows the week of the Breeders' Cup in podcast form, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We're going to be broadcasting them live. This show, of course, too, going out live via the magic of Spreaker. You can find it through, probably the easiest way to find it, I guess, is just to go to my @LoomsBoldly Twitter feed and log on from there if you're interested. We have some questions that have come in from listeners we're going to get to later in the show. Any of the folks listening live want to submit questions, they should feel free to do that. But then in Breeders' Cup Week, in addition to 3 podcasts we're going to be doing, we're also going to be involved with a series of webinars in the afternoon. So its schedule's basically looking like podcasts Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, live at 11. And then what time do you think for the afternoon webinars, Mike? Have we decided on that, or is that in flux still?
Somewhat in flux depending upon guests, but I'm guessing about 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern time, so 11 or 12 on the West Coast. And who knows, Pete? I mean, I'm springing this on you right now, but maybe even possibly an evening one, if that makes some sense. I might be able to make that work if it works for everybody else.
It could be fun. I mean, I was always thinking that was the harder for you than for us. I mean, we'll be out in California, so we'll be 3 hours behind the world, which in this case could be a help. So maybe early in that week, if listeners have thoughts on when they'd like the live content, the webinar content, the podcast Breeders' Cup Week, let us know what's good for your schedules, guys and gals. We'll factor that in as well. So feel free to share that with us. But let's move on. Mike teased it a little bit before. The QE2, there were a couple of different QE2s on either side of the Atlantic on Saturday, but we're going to talk about the one from Keeneland. While many eyes were on my extremely game Time and Motion getting down on her belly and getting the nod, other eyes were focused on the battle for fourth. Mike, I'll let you explain to folks who may have missed the last show.
Oh, Jonathan, I think any chance he can get to do a head-to-head bet with me, he takes it. So he after I picked On Leave, he said, okay, I'll go head-to-head with you. I'll take MoCat. We'll do a bet. Look, On Leave finished half a length in front of MoCat. I guess by default I win the bet, but frankly, neither of them ran and neither of them threatened. I think it's I'll call it a wash. I'll save my karma points and not cash this bet.
Is that okay with you, Jonathan? He's sort of welching for you. Is that in your makeup to allow that to happen?
I'm welch it forward.
No, I text Pete. I text Pete after the race. He said, I said, no, we didn't make no wager, no action. We didn't make an actual wager. we didn't decide what we were betting on. So, no, I lost.
I assumed it was the same terms as last time, but like I said, I'll just welch it forward. I'll get some good karma out of this.
You guys are depriving podcast listeners of whatever this avatar would be. But I'll let you. This is weird to me. I'll admit it's weird, but I'll let it go with the thought that you have a proper bet coming soon to the war to settle the score kind of thing. Are we down with that?
I'm okay with accepting the loss. I got beat, so if we can come up with something, we can make it work.
Yeah, no, I mean that's fair, but it's not like I was. You were the one that jumped in and said, my horse is going to beat yours. For me, I had. It's like, I'll put it this way: it's like the number one ranked team in football who's looking forward to playing number 2, number 3, and then there's this like maybe 500 team that's the cross-state rival that they couldn't care less about. That gets all pumped up for this big game, and to them they're just kind of like whatever. This is less important. For me, MoCat didn't matter. For me, winning mattered. I didn't care whether I beat MoCat or not.
I should have had the head-to-head bet against you with Time and Motion. Then I'd be the big winner, and I wouldn't let you out of anything. So you bet on that.
There you go.
I'll be honest. I think that the real loss there was the fact that Time and not Time and Motion, but On Leave beat Catch a Glimpse, who was my actual selection, who I thought was going to win the race, and who I thought would be a real problem for On Leave. And although she might have been a problem for On Leave outfinished her, which I thought was a little bit disappointing.
Well, let's talk about the race in all seriousness for a minute. Yeah. Actually, one more joking thing. JK, you going to keep backing your West Coast turf horses when they come east, or are you over that affliction?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep betting them.
Now that you're looking more at New York, maybe you'll get the picture of the hierarchy that harmonized. The one who couldn't win against these good East Coast ones had to go out west to win. That told me everything I needed to know, I thought, in terms of the debate you guys had last week. But let's talk about how good Time and Motion is. Is there talk of her coming back for the Breeders' Cup? Does anybody think she could be a factor in one of the turf races there?
I haven't heard any talk of. I would assume there is talk of her going west to the Breeders' Cup, and we'll talk about the E.P. Taylor a little bit too. I think, especially the horse that I wanted in Decida, with her being out, that division is a little bit up in the air right now. These 3-year-old fillies are kind of beating up on each other. The question for me with Catch a Glimpse is: did she just kind of run a clunker? Did she maybe go a little too fast early and it caught up to her late? Or is she maybe a little over the top and maybe needs to go to the sidelines and get ready for the 4-year-old year? I guess that remains to be seen. But I think this division is pretty wide open, and this will be one of the more wide open Breeders' Cup races, in my opinion.
What did you see, JK, and what are your thoughts on any of these going forward to the Breeders' Cup?
Oh, I think she's really good, I heard. I don't know if it was announced on. I don't know if it was on the Naira shows they were doing on Fox in the summer. But after the race at the Belmont Derby, Johnny apparently, told in an interview, told Flo in the gallop out, you're not going to beat me on that filly again, with Catch a Glimpse. And apparently, what he discovered was that he has to stay close to her, and if he lets her get away, she's going to beat him. And so now he's been riding her a little bit more forwardly, and 2 times in a row he's beat her. And she's a really good horse. It doesn't feel like we'll see her back that soon. I don't even know if it would be the smart decision, but who knows? She's a really, really good filly, and she's fun to watch.
Mike, you did that great research project last year, and I have to dig up the results. I wonder if you have them handy. But I was asking you all these questions about how productive certain prep races were for the Breeders' Cup, and I remember one of the questions that I gave a cursory look to was how these QE2 horses come back in the Breeders' Cup, and my off the top of the head remembrance is that they don't do very well. It's just the jump up in class, I think, is a lot, and also the asking them to come back 3 weeks later can be a lot. And I think we've seen several of them come into the race and be bet pretty heavily and not really show their form. So maybe it's worth taking another look at that question as we go forward here. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
I vaguely do. I don't have the data handy, but I think you're right. I think especially many of them will be facing older for the first time, in they're facing some of the better North American turf fillies, but they're also having to deal with some of the Europeans that come over. And so I think a lot of these 3-year-olds coming out of the QE2, coming out of these other 3-year-old restricted races, stepping up into the filly and mare turf, they do tend to get overbet. The best ones do. And that's why I would be a little skeptical about a horse like Time and Motion, assuming that she's going to be one of the choices in there. And maybe she's good enough, but we'll see. And that's partly why I think it's such a wide open race.
Well, we'll see. I mean, you could make an argument to go in a couple of different directions there potentially, and it might be a weird year where you have some European influences and some stateside influences that mean that the QE2 horse wouldn't get particularly overbet, could get a little lost in the market. So we'll be touching on all this stuff as we get closer. Let's talk about some international racing, starting with our friends north of the border up in Toronto at Woodbine. JK, do you have a chance to review either the E.P. Taylor or Canadian International? Props to you, by the way, giving out the 6-1 winner in the E.P. Taylor. Not bad there.
You mean the 6-1 winner that I was so in tune with helping a buddy in the Keeneland tournament that I forgot to bet it? That's what you're talking about?
Oh no, you're kidding.
Not a doll. I didn't even watch the race. Oh my goodness.
The finish was
I will tell you 2 really interesting things I noticed watching those races back. And it's something that I was excited to talk about when I watched the first one, and then I watched the second one and I noticed it too. At the wire, if you pause whatever video you're using, pause at the wire and you'll see every horse that was in both of those races in the picture.
It's amazing.
That's pretty interesting. That never happens. And the Matisse brothers have a name for that. They call it a salad bowl, where it's just like the finish is like a salad, which is all mixed together. And it's kind of an indication of maybe the race not being that good because they all just kind of ran around there in a circle together. And that's kind of what I felt about both of those races. I mean, it doesn't let the chandelier of the year off the hook, but in Wake Forest. But nonetheless, I thought it was an interesting point moving forward, evaluating those 2 races.
Yeah, well, Al's gal, of course, is the one we're talking about in the Taylor. That was a very difficult race. I never did come up with any angle in. I just watched that one. And then I did end up getting involved just because some of the prices were so seemingly out of whack in the Canadian International. We talked about the favorite Idaho, got sweaty going to post once again on a cool day. So basically, as they're going in the gate, I just said I can't have anything to do with him, and ended up betting the North Americans that I liked. I left out Protectionist, who I felt was a little overbet, and somehow had the synaptic misfire and didn't think to include the winner, Erupt, who I did think was pretty impressive in the race. And it was just another lesson for me about looking at form. The horse, funny enough, I can't believe I'm mentioning this horse twice in one podcast, but looking back at Erupt's form, there was something about it that reminded me a little bit of Ecto. And it's these horses who, they've got the back class, they've got a Group 1 win. They've got an arc appearance where they were bet hard. And then, some very uninspiring recent form. But they've still got that back class. And, when they're the right number, especially given my opinion at that point was to be against Idaho, I just felt like a goofball for not at least throwing the horse in for a few bucks to cover the rest of my bets. But I don't know. I mean, I thought it was a pretty nice effort. I haven't seen if they're thinking Breeders' Cup Turf. Jonathan, you've shown your hand that it doesn't seem like you think he'd be a serious contender for that race. What about you, Mike? Did you see anything in the Canadian International you'd think about betting back on Breeders' Cup Day in a few weeks' time?
No, not really. And I'm jogging my brain to think up the race that I'm thinking of. It might have been the Man of War. It wasn't a Man of War a couple years ago. But there was a graded stakes turf race where there were 9 horses separated by 3 lengths a couple years ago. I know our buddies might have been the one. I don't know. Imagining was involved, and Twilight Eclipse was involved, and like Red Rifle, and I think the first and 9th place finishers were separated by like 6 buyer points. Races like that are generally races where I'm against almost all of them going forward unless I can find a compelling reason to bet a horse based on trip or based on pace. And a lot of times I think people will overvalue the first or second place finishers from those. So I need to do a little bit more work. I need to watch the race a few more times. But, nothing really excited me out of either of those races. It also seemed to be a little bit speed favoring. And maybe the ones that I might want to give excuses to were some of the ones that were trying to rally more from off the pace, because it really didn't seem like horses were making up much ground in either of those races.
Yeah, I think it was a function of pace in the International. And Erupt at least came from the back of the pack. The horse I had bet on Dartmouth and turning for home, I would have tripled the bet. I mean, just absolutely perfect position, perfect trip, found nothing. But I do think you're probably right. If there was a pace angle there, it's probably to favor horses coming from a little bit farther back. Did either of you guys happen to watch any of the racing from Champions Day at Ascot?
I watched the race. You texted me. I watched Found.
Okay, what did you think of her?
You want me just to repeat your analysis that I trusted?
You didn't have much of your own thought on that?
I don't have a lot of background on it, right? So I heard what the announcer said after it, and then I talked to you, and both of the things that the announcer said after the race and the things that you said made sense. I could apply them to my own theories of American racing. Is that, like we've talked about on this show before, the winner, which was, who's the winner? The name?
Almanzor.
Is that horse was a horse that stamina could have been a question for, but had an unbelievable turn of foot. The pace was slow, and they invited that horse into the race, and he was closer than he needed to be, and his stamina was never tested, and outfinished the rest of those horses when it became a sprint. Found is more of a grinder. This is where I'm kind of stealing from you. And the way that the race was set up, it did her no favors.
She ran awesome, I thought. I mean, I really thought under the circumstances that was the best case scenario for her. Like she wasn't going to beat that horse the way that it was just run so perfectly for him. Slow enough early, and then critically fast enough, at least in a middle stage, to create some gaps for Soumillon to make the move through. Soumillon, a rider who really values saving ground, and so both, like, everything went his way. And Found just did what she does. She ran her excellent race, and no shame at all there. But I will say, just from reading the tea leaves in the betting subsequent to the race, and more than just the tea leaves, even Aidan O'Brien's post race quotes, she does not sound a likely Breeders' Cup starter to me, which is a little bit disappointing, if not surprising, knowing that the team has Highland Reel. Will hopefully run a little bit better in the Breeders' Cup than his brother did in Canada, Dartmouth. But it does make me think that we're probably not going to see her, which is kind of a bummer.
Yep.
And we could talk about those races for the rest of the show, but it's, let's wait and see who's going to end up coming over. We'll focus on the horses that we're going to definitely see at Santa Anita or are likely to see at Santa Anita. In fact, if you guys are cool with this idea, I think one of those 3 shows, Breeders' Cup Week, I think we should do an all-shipper special or an all-European special. Maybe get Marcus on, who follows that beat, and one of my friends from the UK to come in, and we'll go through those horses' form with a fine-tooth comb and maybe help people find some winners and some angles on the European horses running at the Breeders' Cup. You guys like that idea?
I do. Let's make it happen.
Excellent.
I got a quick correction for you, Pete. You said Dartmouth was Highland Reel's full brother. You're actually thinking of Idaho.
Oh, right. I got that. How did I confuse those? Only one is.
I don't know.
Only one is from the same family. Only one is from the same connections. Thank you for that, Mike. Better than letting me make a mistake on air, not saying anything, and then have 50 people contact me on Twitter.
That's right.
So
That's right.
I do appreciate the transparency. We got a couple of questions that have come in. Some from the Twitterverse, and I had one stored up that was kind of nice and potentially irreverent for us to get into. So we're going to start with that. This is from Drew Coatney on Twitter. He wanted to ask us, as horse players, about our favorite race day rituals, maybe specifically when going to a certain track. For him, he said that having a Bloody Mary on the Metro to Arlington Park is one for him. How about you, Jonathan? Any special race day rituals you care to share?
Well, if there's a tournament that I really need to win, I'll take a bath. That was an accident. At the NHC, the year that I did really well, my shower was broken. I called down to get it fixed, and they wouldn't fix it. And the first race was in like 45 minutes. I had to bathe, so I took a bath, and then I had my 7th and 10th finish in the NHC that time. So if I ever need a tournament win, I take a bath. My favorite race day ritual is it's not really. I wish I had a Bloody Mary story. I usually have some type of beverage, but when you go to Santa Anita, I always go in the clubhouse gate, and I always walk up those stairs through that kind of old-timey, like chandelier-looking room situation, go up the stairs, no matter what room I'm going to, no matter if we're going to the suite, to the front runner, to wherever, to the Logan, and to walk up those stairs and to see the mountains right when you get to the track and you see the tractors. There's nothing that makes me feel like that does, and it's my favorite thing to do, racetrack ritual.
That's awesome. I've seen that. It's usually on Snapchat if you're interested to see it the next time. JK is going to be out there if you follow him on there. It's a lot of fun to see, and it reminds me of being a kid and that sort of a stereotype of an image, but I swear I actually remember it and going, especially in New York where we had those sort of dark, old 60s era ballparks that were sort of dungeony inside, and then you turn a corner to go out to your seat, and there it is, boom, all that expanse of green in front of you, and it's like you're walking into some sort of secular cathedral, and I get a very similar vibe from that at Santa Anita. The one I'll share does involve an alcoholic beverage, and it has to do with Del Mar. I only did it once, so it's not really a ritual, but I do try to recreate it every year as we go out to Belmont. And that the idea is you get on a big racing day where there's presumably going to be traffic and waiting, get yourself a group of friends, a big obnoxious vehicle. The original was a limousine. In recent years, we've done it's not a Hummer. What's the other giant, big, obnoxious car? An Escalade? Is it an Escalade?
Yeah, the Cadillac one. Yeah.
Yeah. We do the Escalade and pop a bottle or two of champagne in the back. I actually remember the first bottle of champagne was a vintage 1990 Pol Roger. This was probably in the late 90s. And you turn a negative into a positive instead of having it be this like stressful wait or you're packed into a train. You're just hanging out, you're playing music, and you get to have a nice drink on your way to the races, maybe take a last little look at the racing form. Mike Hogan, how about you? Do you have a racetrack ritual to share?
As a horse player, I'm surprisingly non-superstitious. I don't really have anything that I don't have a favorite shirt or a special pen or any of that stuff. So I don't really. And, I've lived in different parts of the country and been to so many different racetracks. I don't even really have a set home base where I would play or where I would do things. It's always just like how I feel on that given day. But one thing I will mention for JK, I love the fact that you literally take a bath so that you don't figuratively take a bath.
That's an excellent point. I let that one go. That's a good observation.
Pete, I didn't know that I have the same ritual as you. It just might not always be as glamorous. Essentially, your ritual is a roadie.
Yes.
And
yes.
And as long as I'm not driving, which I'm typically not driving, I have a roadie as well every time on the way to the track. So I guess we have the same ritual.
That's fantastic. Barry Spears points out on the chatter on the Spreaker interface that it sounds like a rap video, and it's probably as close as my life has gotten to being a rap video. So there you go. I like that question from Drew so much. He asked another one a little more practical. He asked, what system do you guys use to manage your picks once you're at the track? Pen to paper? Do you lug a laptop around, etc.? I'm really curious to hear how all three of us answer this one. JK, we'll start with you. Managing your picks once you're at the track.
I am typically a laptop bringer. I usually have a home base where I kind of do everything. On the bigger days like Derby Day and Breeders' Cup, well, except for the Breeders' Cup betting challenge, it's a little bit more challenging to lug around a laptop. So I'll do that. One of the things I'll do if you have a Mac, and I think a lot of PCs can do it as well, but I'll get in Ticket Maker and I will, build my early pick 5 and my late pick 4 and all that stuff. And then I'll screenshot those two things and text them to myself. That's one thing I'll do. The other thing is that most people are iPhone users, or a lot of people are, and other ones have notes as well. I'll get in notes a lot with my phone and kind of write out my ticket 3 with 148 with 148. And I'll kind of do it like that. I try not. I'm not much of a paper guy.
But then on paper, but you don't like to bring it to the track. Is that what you're saying? Because I know you handicap.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, no, I bring it. I mean, look, I'll try to find some white spots on my forums to try to write down bets a little bit. But most of the big stuff, I usually try to do it on the Ticket Maker app you can use as well. It just worries me sometimes with the cell service that it might not work. So I try to at least have a basis down.
No, that makes sense. I have different methods. If I'm really serious about betting, and one thing, and this is so sad that I've realized this, I'm revealing it. I haven't said this out loud to anybody, but man, looking at this year, my ROI at the track versus at home, I do so much better at home. And this is as a guy who likes to go look at the horses too. So theoretically, I have that as an edge when I'm there. And it's not that the look stuff has let me down. It's all the distractions. And it's trying, I think, manage this very issue that Drew is talking about. And I don't think I do it very effectively. I think when I do well, if I'm at Saratoga and I'm just holed up in the press box with a bunch of monitors and my laptop in front of me, or often at Saratoga, I'll bring 2 laptops. And so I'll get my full complement of screens that I'm used to at home. And then I can still pop down to the paddock to see horses. That's probably the best of both worlds. But, it's pretty rare that actually goes down that way. By the third race, you run into somebody you haven't seen in 6 months. And the next thing you know, you're at the paddock bar and Desiree buys you a drink and it's all downhill from there. And for the days where I know I'm going to be socializing, I'm analog. I will try my best to just have my form, the same form that I used to handicap, and I just go old school. I'll try to shortcut it for myself by just writing my quote unquote numbers down at the top of the page. So I'll be able to have that information right in front of me to refer to quickly. But I think that the real time info that you can get when you're focused, I mean, to do it if you're in a situation where you could do it with a laptop and be in a setup where you can adjust and be more on the fly. I do my best work when I can be constantly tweaking up to the last minute. Mike, I know you are not a paper guy, so I'm really curious to hear how you manage this stuff once you're at the track.
Well, this is sort of a new development for me because up until a few years ago, I was exclusively a paper guy, to the point where I would go out to the track or wherever and buy the form the night before if I was really serious about it, and then just handicap the actual paper. Or I would go out a little early that morning before the races started and start my handicapping out there. I frankly, until a few years ago, never even bought a digital version of past performances ever.
I am shocked to hear, by the way. Sorry to interrupt you, Mike, but I'm just shocked and I feel like I need to make the observation that before at DRF Formulator worked for the racing form, he did not use at DRF Formulator. It's just very surprising to me. Seems like you've been weaned on the program.
I did a little bit before, so it's not like I walked in never having used it. It's more, I'm thinking back 5-6 years ago when I would regularly go out to, say, Portland Meadows, play the races out at Santa Anita or Del Mar, watch the races at Portland Meadows. I was doing all my handicapping on paper from the form. I mean, maybe I once or twice downloaded a couple, but it was very, very, very rare that I would do so. So now, flash forward to now, all of my handicapping is done on screen. Obviously, I use Formulator for so much of what I do. The way I manage my picks, regardless of whether I'm home, going somewhere, out at Central Park, go out at the track, whatever, is I use the notes thing on my phone. And for each race, I will list my A's and B's and C's. Because like Jonathan, I don't always rely on Ticketmaker not necessarily from Ticketmaker being unreliable, but for cell service being reliable enough. So I don't want to lose any of that. I have it as a note doc on my phone. And then after scratches, I make updates. I go back. If I'm at the track, I fortunately have the luxury of working at the racing form. So there's free papers here I can grab. So I can grab a paper, handicap off that. I usually don't carry a laptop around. Once I've done my full handicapping, I'll go back and visually look at the paper if I need to make adjustments based on scratches and whatnot. But that's generally how I do it. There's probably a better way, and I guess maybe at some point in time I'll start lugging a laptop or a tablet around. But it's frankly so rare that I'm seriously playing away from my home that that's kind of the way I do it.
I'm envious of the tablet people, especially those that use one that you can physically write on. That really looks like a good way to go to me. It's just that for some reason I can't quite get my head around to do it, to create that PDF and then just mark it up and then just have that with you always. It eliminates the paper problem. I think even tracks that don't allow laptops, I assume they would let you bring tablets in. Does that idea appeal to you at all, JK? Could that be the future?
Yeah, I mean, it appeals to me. It just, here's my thing. I have a problem with technology that seems like a good idea, but never seems to work as good as you want it to work. And that's how I feel my experiences with using the markup tool on a laptop. It seems like a great idea and it's supposed to be really good, but it never really works the way that I would like for it to work. And
you
so
said laptop, you mean tablet though?
I meant, yeah, tablet, tablet. Yeah.
Just to clarify.
I think our friend Frank Scatoni, he does that. And I've seen him do it
he's
before.
He's had good success with it. Yeah.
And it looks good. It just, the times I've tried it, it just doesn't feel great for me. So I've just always, gone a different direction.
Like so many other things in horse racing and handicapping, it's so subjective and finding something that works for you. But I do think it's a good question to talk about because I really do think it can make a difference. So if folks out there listening want to share some ways that they try to solve these problems, square this circle, feel free to pass that along in the comments through Spreaker as well.
One thing I used to do that I kind of got away from, and I don't know, I guess saying it out loud may be something I need to revisit. But what I used to do is I used to have an Excel sheet, and I would take Belmont race 1, and I would put 1 through 7, and I would have to write at least a sentence about every horse.
That's great.
And it what it would do is
we lost Jonathan there for a second. I think we're still broadcasting, but I'm pretty sure where he was going with that.
Well, I hear him.
Oh, I couldn't hear you there, Jonathan. Yeah. So I'm worrying that the listeners couldn't either. But continue.
Oh, well, what I was saying is, it's not that I would read it back, but just the idea of actually writing it down, it made me understand what was happening in the race a little bit better.
I agree, and it keeps you from being lazy. That's the biggest thing I've noticed. I used to, when I had the old Unbearable Lightness of Betting blog, that was my approach, which subsequently a Daily Racing Form competitor, I'm not saying they got it from me, but did their big race analysis that way too, where you literally go through every horse, and then the next step for that, and I've done this, I don't think I've done it since last year's Breeders' Cup, but if I'm really doing the 100% job, to write a sentence and also use a spreadsheet to create a 100% odds line. Now that's a step I haven't done since last year's BC, but I love that, because it's almost like when you have all your opinions there in front of you like that, sort of boiled down to a number that you can tweak, it kind of feels when you approach the betting windows like you have the launch codes. Like you've just got your info there. It takes some of the emotion out of the process, some of the subjectivity out of the process. You've handicapped the race to the best of your ability. You've looked at every horse enough to quantify your opinion and maybe write something about it too. Those are probably the times when I've gone through that exercise, which probably isn't nearly enough times in my life. I guarantee you my ROI is a lot higher than even when I handicap a race, but don't go through that extra step of writing something down and transferring something over. And I think it gets down to sort of like what you were talking about before, Jonathan, just how the brain works, how each individual's brain works.
Right, absolutely.
All right, let's move it forward. We had a question in the comments here from our friend Paul Romanelli about Lord Nelson. I don't really know. This is something I'd never thought of, so I'll just hit it to you guys. With Lord Nelson's stud fee announced, that makes me think he could be close to a lock in the sprint. They usually won't make an announcement like that unless all systems are go on a horse. The grammar was a little off, but I'm pretty sure that's what he meant. Mike Hogan, have you ever heard of this concept? I don't even know what it means.
I guess the idea being that you don't announce the stud fee prior to the Breeders' Cup race unless you're convinced that the horse is gonna run well. Because if I guess if he runs poorly, then maybe there's less interest. I don't know. I don't know if there's much to that. Yeah, maybe. You could maybe use it as a potential upgrade. I probably wouldn't use it much as a factor in my handicapping. I mean, I think in the case of Lord Nelson, he's going to be one of the top betting choices and maybe the favorite for the race. And I've said before, I'm more on the West Coast horses, particularly the West Coast sprinters this year. So, if you like him already, it probably just makes you even more confident.
A.P. Indian has just crossed Mike Hogan off his Christmas card.
Yeah, good.
But JK, you, as far as I'm concerned, you are the master of incorporating what you might call soft data into the fundamental handicapping that you do. This tidbit about Lord Nelson, how do you process it?
I mean, it would matter more to me if he wasn't going to stand for who already owns him. You know what I mean?
That's
like he's standing for Spendthrift, so it's like, it doesn't really, to me, it does. I get it, and I commend noticing something like that, and I would encourage people to do that. But this one doesn't move me. Gotcha. I mean, I like the horse, and I think he's got a good shot to win the race. But I don't feel like this announcement makes him a lock.
Sounds like the consensus of our panel is neither certainly not a minus, but not particularly a plus. We'll be talking about that Breeders' Cup Sprint a lot more in the coming days. What else should we yap about? We got a few minutes left on the show. Let's talk a little DRF tournaments. We've got a lot of action on there this week, starting tomorrow. We got feeders. We've got credit builders. The big contests at the weekend are the Gulfstream Conquer, the Crown Feeder. Have you been playing in any of those, JK? Are you looking to qualify for Florida? Little December vacation?
No, I think I'm going to probably take a break after the Breeders' Cup on tournament. I mean, trying to travel and stuff. I'll probably just chill until the NHC. So no, but at the same time, I've been known to get on a plane the morning of to go do something like that with being able to fly for free. So I'm not targeting it yet, but it could be a late change there.
I do think it's going to be a fun day for a contest. I mean, as a contest player, the idea of those claiming crown races, full fields, a lot of fundamental handicapping involved. I mean, that aspect of it must appeal to you, right?
Oh no, absolutely. And it's the Gulfstream kind of fall tournament that I had success in last year. So I wanted to try to get down there, but I think with the two unexpected Keeneland trips this fall, and then Breeders' Cup and blah blah blah, I think I might keep the wheels on the ground.
Makes sense. That there are feeders from Wednesday on. The qualifier for that one is Saturday. Also this weekend on Saturday, we have an NHC contest, and then Sunday, Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge takes center stage. And that's one with a pretty favorable ratio, I believe. It's a $400 buy-in, so I think that's going to have a fairly favorable ratio to players. I can't remember off the top of my head what that means, but it's not going to be it's not going to be a 1 in 80 type situation there for folks looking to get into the BCBC. And of course, it's also now we're getting into territory where it's one of the last online qualifiers for the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. What's your strategy to get yourself an extra BCBC seat between now and then, JK?
Yeah, I'll probably play the you could pick which one you want. The $44 ones are top 10%. The $88 are top 20%. I'll probably play a few of those throughout the week. Maybe pick a couple of days this week where I like something. I'll look tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday and try to identify a couple of horses that I'd like to build some stuff around, and then maybe try to attack one of those 2 days and see where I can get.
What do you prefer of those two feeder possibilities, and compare and contrast? It seems pretty obvious that the positive of the lower buy-in is the low buy-in, and the positive of the higher buy-in is more of a chance to get there. Is there more to it than that, and which direction do you typically shoot?
It's funny, and it is actually a really good comparison to just my normal play as well. I am typically more of a bet more with a more likely chance of winning than a bet less with a less likely chance of winning. I prefer the bet more. So naturally, I prefer the $88 20% rather than the $44 10%.
It's a question of increasing your strike rate. Is that just a psychological thing, or is that from looking at your records that you prefer that, or is it a personality issue?
Personality and psychological. That's what it is for me. I would prefer to not that I get down on myself, but I like to see the ball go through the hoop.
Yeah.
I hate shooting bricks and bricks and bricks and bricks and bricks and then hoping. I prefer to see the ball go through the hoop. But at the same time, when you do shoot a brick, when you're playing the ball go through the hoop strategy, it's a little bit more of a painful situation in terms of the amount of money that you lose. So, I think both strategies are the same. It's just which one not the same, but both strategies are similar based on the fact that it just depends on how you feel about it personally.
All right, we just got 2 minutes left, so it's time for final thoughts. Mike, what do you got for us?
Well, I was going to ask you if either of you guys are playing the Belmont $83,000 Pick 6 carryover tomorrow.
I was not planning on looking at it.
Yeah, okay.
Horses running in a circle. You can bet on them.
I'm too deep into my Breeders' Cup preparations, I think, to get too distracted. Are you going to take a little swing there, you think, Mike?
Probably not. I'm not. Pick 6 isn't usually, unless we're talking crazy 6-digit, 7-digit carryover numbers and or mandatory payouts. It's not something I usually pay much attention to. That said, I'll take a look if I've got some strong opinions. I will probably take the approach that JK doesn't, which is the bet a little with a small chance of winning approach.
Yeah, well, I wish we had more time. That's a good conversation to go deeper into some point, because I did see you do that, Mike. One of the few tickets you played, it was just very cold, very tight, and I just assume when you play a bet like that, you're not going to hit many, but the ones you hit pay for the others, presumably. Is that the general philosophy?
Yeah, what you're talking about is the bet that I played at Keeneland. I had two horses. I did a couple pick threes, singled to on leave. Basically, what I was trying to do was do an alternate win bet on leave, creating value in some of the early races where I thought that there were some vulnerable favorites. So I used two horses in the first leg, the fifth race, I think. I don't know. the 2 races prior to the QE2. I used the 1 and the 8, 1 being Camac, I think, and the 8 being Coalport. Coalport 1 paid 12 something. Then I went deep in the second leg and pressed a little more heavily on Conquest Big No Show and the number 9 Yaki's Warrior, who ended up winning at a nice price. So I was alive for multiple pick 3s to on leave, single to on leave. Of course, came out with nothing, but yeah, that's often how I approach things. Even though I had good opinions in the earlier legs, my main opinion was on leave and left with nothing.
A lot of this stuff comes down to betting personality, and that's all the time we have on today's show. We are going to be back later in the week. We'll be looking at some races from the weekend. I assume some Maryland Million stuff maybe will be in the public handicapper races. Perhaps we can get a special guest to join us Friday to talk about some of those races. I've got somebody in mind if the timing works out for her, but we'll have to see about that. Want to thank Jonathon Kinchen. I want to thank Mike Hogan. Most of all, I want to thank all of you for listening. We will be back Friday. Until then, may you win all your photos.